Feels dramatic, I know. Feels like I'm almost under some sort of interrogation. If someone wants to ask me my relationship with my football club, I'd tell them right now it's pretty complicated. It doesn't feel right, but at the same time, if you're watching this and you're not entrenched in Chelsea every day, you're probably thinking, oh, these guys are spoiled. They're fourth in the league. What could they possibly be complaining about? It's not like they're 16th. And I get that. But there's a weird feeling, a weird vibe that needs to be addressed, of course. And there's three pillars to this post. It's Maresca, the manager, the directors, and then the ownership. We're going to go in order. And I just want to have a sit, have an honest kind of telltale of how I'm feeling, where I'm at, and kind of break everything down as honestly and responsibly as I can. Because I don't want to come off as shouting and angry and raging. You know, I've had time to sit down the last couple of days and just settle. And then we'll come to a conclusion. And I think there's some things that will happen, and there's some things that need to happen, and there's some things that absolutely won't happen, in my opinion, but based off experience and, you know, previous encounters. So let's start with the manager. When the manager was hired, it was very clear with the shortlist, McKenna and Vincent Company, that not only were we looking for a young manager that was inexperienced at the top level, but also a manager that was really going to fast track themselves to top level football. And what happens with that is that those people are not only inexperienced, high potential, so it allows you to dream and wonder about what they could be and what they might be, but also it comes with the title head coach. It comes with the title of do as I say and everything will be okay. And we knew that because we didn't bring in some sort of high profile, you know, big CV, trophy winner, big personality, outspoken individual like a Conte, etc. Allegri, right? Or Mourinho. And I'm not saying these guys are in their prime now, but in the previous past of Roman Abramovich, these are the type of managers we would have went for. Or someone that just commands respect and has that aura, Carlo Ancelotti. We went for potential. We went for the next catalogue of managers that are trying to be top managers, right? And what comes with that is, for me, at the start of the season, a statement that I said, this season, for the credit, if we were to win the league, if we were to wildly overachieve, of course the manager will have some big credit, but the main credit would go to the ownership and the directors, because they were the ones that took the gamble, took the risk, and appointed him and found a diamond in the dirt, right? You went to the championship and you fast-tracked someone that wasn't expected to manage at this level this quickly. But in the same sentence I said, if it goes wrong, if it's an underachievement, if we don't qualify for the competitions we need to, if we don't pick up silverware that we should, then again, most of the responsibility, just like most of the credit, most of the responsibility would fall on you, the directors, the owners, because you took that gamble. High risk, high reward, but high risk. That's the main thing. You took a big gamble with the football club, with the future, with the finances. But with Maresca, it's increasingly becoming clearer and clearer, which is not a shock, but it's sad reality that he is voicing the opinions of above. He's getting lost in his own lies at times. A lot of the things that he's saying in press conferences aren't stacking up, aren't making sense, aren't consistent with what he said earlier on in the season, isn't consistent with what he lacks from a squad building perspective to get results, which is the most important thing. And then, of course, when you're managing a club like Chelsea, there is always also a standard. There is a threshold, like FA Cups, and going out of them to prioritise Premier Leagues, which Champions League football is ahead of schedule and not a priority based upon the window we had that I mentioned in a previous video, but also based upon his own words. That doesn't add up. Felix conversation, wanting him, then him being exiled in 6 months, too many 10s, but I wanted a 10, doesn't make sense, etc., etc. There's loads of examples. But again, he's a head coach. So I can only get so angry that he's like that. I can only be so surprised that his squad or, you know, position selections for the team are based upon politics sometimes, Sanchez, or based upon wage, you know, salaries and Chukwuemeka, not necessarily based upon just what he truly needs or wants from a technical perspective. So I can only be so annoyed because I didn't have high expectations. I didn't have massive, knowledge about this man. He had one season at Leicester. So the people above him are the ones responsible, despite the gustos at left backs or the right back being Desassi or, not putting Palmer on the right wing. All of these tactical selections that we get annoyed about, all of these rigid systems that we complain about. Why don't you overlap the fullback? Why do you invert them? Etc. But I always say, along with that, the tools given is the house that will be built. And at the end of the day, there is squad building issues, massive misprofiling that comes from above him that make his job more difficult, that make his job harder than it should be. A club of this size, of this magnitude, shouldn't have certain issues that we have up front, shouldn't have, too many tens, shouldn't have no leadership, no physicality, no box presence, no set piece threat. These are things that are beyond Maresca because, as you know, he doesn't have a say in the signings. And that was proven quite clear from last summer, PSR problems and players coming in that he doesn't rate, value or need or use. If you think he should have to use them, then how many managers will you want to go through before they all complain about the same physicality, intangibles, leadership, all these lack of squad balance, all these things. So that's where we go to the directors. The directors obviously being Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstanley. Last season I said with Pochettino, they should also leave because I don't think they're doing a good job. I don't think when you spend 1 billion euros according to Transfer Market, that's excluding the summer of Todd Bowley being the sporting director, I don't think you should have as many holes to fill in the squad as we do. I think the money should be allocated better. I think you should be accountable to how much you spend, to the quality that is produced on the pitch. I don't think we should have a whole spine to rectify. I'm not saying there's been no good purchases, but it does feel inevitably that if Palmer doesn't turn up from an attacking standpoint, this team falls flat on its face. That shouldn't be the case after 1 billion spent. You should have multiple, almost Galacticos to turn to, multiple game winners, individual brilliance to turn to. If he doesn't play well, that shouldn't be the end of our attack. But it is at this current moment because the burden is not shared. That is their responsibility. Having loads of stockpiling Washingtons, Datro Fofanas, Gues, Whispers Richards, that is your responsibility. Signing me, signing Matisse from France, Saint Etienne, some 19-year-old centre midfielder when you have other young central midfielders not only just in the academy but also out on loan. Stockpiling again, that is your decision to keep spending 15, 20 million time and time again on players that you don't necessarily have a plan for or a space for in your multi-club model because you only have Strasbourg and you have a limit on international loans. And that's why we see Argentine Aaron not in the Conference League squad, not going to play in the Premier League, 6 months of just training. So many talents that are not developing at the rate they should be because there is no time, thought, plan for them to actually improve, develop, and showcase to us why we purchased them in the first place. That is not good squad management. That is not good squad building. That is not wise because people chat, people talk. That's why we get rejected by players sometimes, like Tell. Yep, Chelsea Football Club should never be rejected by Matthias Tell, but that will happen if people are in their group chats and in their circles and they look at previous examples of it not working out for a big cluster of players, a big enough cluster for people to be like, I don't think I'll go there because they don't really care about me as an individual. They see me as an asset. And most clubs do. That's the modern football. But there's levels to this game. And when you're selling people 6 months after purchasing them, or you're loaning them out 6 months after purchase them with the idea to sell, trying to, play the big bollocks and say, we're only going to take a 40 million for Chukwuemeka. We're only going to sell Vega. But then you end up loaning them. You got your tail in between your legs. You look foolish. You look unserious. How many times has Egg Barley had to step in and close a transfer because you couldn't? That's on them. And for me, I don't think they're good enough to do the job that I would want our directors to do, a Campos, that level at PSG, to win. Because as a fan, I only get, memories and moments made and tears out my eyes from winning trophies or seeing players that I've got a massive affiliation to or an attachment, emotional attachment to, score their first goal, all these things. But that can only happen when the priority is to be the best. That's what we are, right? And even before Roman, this was the case. Ken Bates, You want to look at Chelsea winning the Super Cup against Madrid. You want to look at Chelsea winning the FA Cup with Di Matteo. You want to look at Chelsea picking up some cups whilst being 6th and 5th, sometimes even higher in the top 4 before Roman. That is what the club was about. There was always some talent, some quality. There is in this team, but the mindset, the mentality isn't there. The balance isn't there between seniors and between youngsters. That's on the directors. But who tell the directors what to do? Who give them the power to make these boneheaded stockpiling decisions? Who give them 1 billion to spend and still not have a complete squad, and then make excuses and put out briefs and PR about themselves and pat themselves on the back for a job well done that isn't complete, and tell you that we don't have to make Champions League? Filter that down from them to the directors, to the manager, for Reece James to even come out and say, take it game by game, like there isn't a demand, like there isn't an expectation, accountability to be in the Champions League. We look crazy as fans for asking for it, like as if this is some wild, weird expectation that we're setting, like we're demanding a treble or a quadruple after this spend, just purely trying to put some respect on the badge, purely trying to get a front of shirt sponsor back on the home kit, purely trying to attract top players back to the club to finish off that spine, those 3-4 signings that we talk about that we need to finish off this team. Surely the bare minimum is Champions League football. But some people are made to look crazy for asking for it, demanding it, expecting it. But that comes from the ownership. And that comes from the two sides. It's Todd Boehly versus Eghbali. And to be honest, a few months ago, Todd Boehly was kind of spoken about as a man that was more sporting, was more, fan-driven in terms of the interaction was there. He was the face of it. And Eghbali was more the businessman, the consortium, the player trading, the flipping, the money maker. So obviously, as a fan, I'm going to side with the person that's more interested in sports, has a love for the sport, has an interest for the sport. That man is in trouble, vivid seats. That man has to put out a statement and clarify, conclude with us a little bit that conflict of interest. But also, when we talk about the ownership, we talk about protesting. People talk about, let's get them out. There is no successful example I've been able to pull up of recent times, whether it be the Cronkies or the Glazers, of people driving out their ownerships. The only time is just before they arrive. I have previous experience in this. I did the Ricketts protest. Now, it wasn't massive. It was the best I could do. It took a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of marketing across social media, across YouTube channels, wherever I could have any sort of influence. But let's not overestimate said influence. Let's not overestimate said voice. Yes, YouTubers or accounts are on these platforms to speak, to give their opinion. But let's not lie about the best protest we've ever seen for the Super League. That didn't come from these accounts. It didn't come from their rage, from their anger, from their opinion. It came from here, the heart. Came from we must. And that stadium, those matchgoers, those people that are over 40 and 50, that are on Facebook, MSN, still have a BlackBerry, BBM. You can't get to these people. They have to want it. They have to really want it deep and down inside them. And the God's honest truth is, I can do a temperature check. I know if we've got a fever or if we don't. We're very fickle, including myself. We could talk about getting them out or this is unacceptable, but it's very results-based. It's very results-driven. Win 3-4 games on the bounce and this talk won't be spoken. It won't be out there. That's not how a successful, protest or change of power happens. It can't be that fickle. And trust me, there are pros and there are cons to stepping outside with banners and with, words written on cardboard. And I'm not talking about privileges. I'm not talking about access. I'm not interested in that. I'm talking about you do a bad protest with not a lot of people. You do a protest where you didn't market it. You didn't explain your points. You didn't convince the Chelsea fan base enough that they needed to step outside if they were 50-50. There wasn't boos around the ground. There wasn't enough anger in the heart. There wasn't really a unanimous conclusion or, this is wrong, we must do something about it. You do a poor one, you do a poor protest, and not only have you lost the vote of confidence from the Chelsea fans that were 50-50 and these guys are silly, they didn't even make their points clear, they didn't even really, gather any momentum. The media latch onto that. Look how stupid these guys are outside, 50 of them. The ownership, if they dare see it, only 50 of these guys, well, people must not care. People must not really care as much as you think they do. As much noise as you make on social media, outside, stepping out on 10 toes, do people care? Do people really want to tap their oyster? Yeah? Book their Uber, go to the front, and really, I don't sense that. There's not enough commotion, there's not enough anger. I personally don't see it. So let's not lie to ourselves like we're on the brink of it, because we're not. And there are other ways. People always talk about that way, but there is not going to the game. If you don't feel connected, personally, I've never been more connected, because every game we play poorly, or if we disappoint, I get more emotionally attached and involved. I remember winning things with ease, winning games with ease. And if anything, I'm coming calmer. I'm coming more, just more chill, more relaxed, because I'm over expecting. If we didn't win 5-0 and we won 3, I'm thinking, that's disappointing. The worse you get, almost the more emotionally attached and angry you get. But that's different. That differs between person to person. But at the end of the day, you could not go to the game. You could not buy the merch drop. You could not, you could not contribute to the incoming of funds if you don't believe it's going in the right way or going to the right place. But it's becoming more and more difficult to separate these owners in terms of, is there any good there? Is there any bad? But it's also very difficult for me to sit here and pretend like we're on the brink of a revolution, because we're not. I know what 4-5 wins can do. I know what 4-5 spine signings could do. I don't think the whole squad needs gutting. I don't think the whole squad is awful. But I think you definitely need to balance it. You definitely need to bring in the right players in the right position to aid and help some of the good that you have, some of the players that are actually, in my opinion, talented. If you do that, I don't think we'll have this conversation again. I genuinely don't. I don't think we'll have this conversation again if the model does change, if we do take a bit more priority with the first team and stop thinking about Strasbourg or stockpiling young players and making mini little 2 million profits off loans. But if we don't, then there's a cap, there's a ceiling to us. We won't win majors. We won't win, titles or Champions Leagues. Go and look at any successful team that won anything serious. There was always leaders. There was always top world-class players. But if you don't balance out your squads, and if you think that we've got all day, because don't need to do it this year, can do it next year, and then next year becomes the year after, well, then you end up going 10 years without a title. You end up going 10 years without a domestic cup in this country. We're now on 7 years. But you also end up losing your best players because they have short careers and they don't have time to waste. So there is an urgency. It does need to happen right now. It should have happened in January to really cement us and secure the Champions League football with a bit more confidence. And if we don't make it this season, Champions League, those directors do need to be sacked. Am I completely happy with the ownership? No, I'm not. Do I think that we're going to force them to relinquish power? No, I don't. Once they're in, you're stuck with them. Hence why when I did the Ricketts protest, I just did it. I had to do it immediately because they weren't in yet. So now it's like, what are the solutions? How can we make the best of a bad situation? How can we improve? And that is to keep demanding and calling out what we need. Don't be afraid to say it. Opinions are open, but let's not also lie to ourselves. If you really feel like you can start a protest, start it. If you live in this country, do it. There's no time like the present. Don't sit around talking about it, waiting. But like I said, make sure you do it right, or make sure that you make your points, because if you do it wrong, it's just as damning as if you do it at all. If you do it wrong and it fails, it's a problem. It sets us back. So, it takes immense planning. And for me, like I said, we're very fickle. Few right results and we're fine. Few more wrong results and we'll see where we sit. But that's where I feel right now, people. I feel like we are a little bit capped off with the mindset. I think there's a lot of ego. It's very clear with the briefings, with the reporting. There's a lot of ego in the director's room. There's a lot of ego in the ownership. It's their way or no way. You need to bend a little bit. You need to alter your ways because, listen, if you don't, you've capped the club. and you're not making the maximum amount of money. And I've said that before. If you want to make big money in this thing, you've got to be successful. It increases the fan base size. It increases the revenue coming into the club. Sponsorship deals, winning trophies breeds more success. If you want to be Brighton or you want to be Bournemouth, why didn't you buy them? You know, why have to do this on steroids? Well, it's pretty obvious what the answer is. More money. I'm hoping and praying that it won't be that way, but yeah. Make more money by being the best of the best, attracting the best of the best. That's my way of doing it personally, but we'll see how this all plays out. Guys, let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments. It's a weird feeling right now around the club. It's a weird tone. A lot of people are questioning or confused about what direction we're going in. We're fourth, and we can go third, or we can go fifth, sixth, and we're on a pendulum. We're swinging, and we don't know which way we're gonna go. That FA Cup exit was hurtful, and now all we have left is the bare minimum objective, which is Champions League and Conference League. And if we win that and we reach the objective, we've still got our eyes on you. We're still focused on you, but breathing room, at least for a little bit. Just before we go, a couple of things that came to mind. Two things, actually. First of all, Man United, great example. May 2021, they did a protest against Liverpool. Got the game called off. Fans stormed the pitch. The Glazers are still in. Turkish LDN. He had, smoke behind him. Looked iconic. The Cronkies are still in. And then also the gimmicks. The PR, the briefing, a lack of respect for the intangibles. This is the directors we're talking about. Bringing in another rugby motivational coach. This is not how you spearhead a top mentality team. This is not how you create the right minerals or the right vitamins to win. It's a gimmick. It's a shortcut. It's a shut the fuck up. You wanted leadership? Here you go. No, we're not stupid. It comes from the players. It comes from the manager. It comes from the expectations. It comes from the top. It comes from expectations, demands, objectives, being serious. It doesn't come from rugby coach from Australia. It doesn't come from the waka waka, whatever that dance is called that they do at the start of the games. So that's New Zealand, isn't it? You get my point. You get my point.